Welcome to another episode of Awakening the Feminine Within. Today, I am going to talk to you about why your business may not be growing as quickly or as efficiently as you might want it to be. Or maybe you're in a place where you're like, why is my business not growing? I'm doing all the actions, I'm posting on social media, and why am I not where I think I should be? So if you are a business owner or you are starting a business and you say you have been trying and searching everywhere, Google, networking events, informational areas, and you keep hearing or feeling a pull towards doing. And you're like, okay, you know what? All I have to do is a simple formula of doing, and then I will get an X result, saving money, clients, business growth, etc. But the overall goal is that doing is going to equal a certain result. And I did this for the first 2.5 years of my business, and it did definitely produce a result. I mean, I made 6 figures in my first 7 months of business in 2019, and then I doubled it every year from then on. It definitely worked. And I remember, I was so hungry. I was hungry for all the information that was out there, business growth, marketing advice, you name it. Like, I followed so many people. I talked to people at networking events and I was like, okay, what are you doing? Referral programs, XYZ. It was like every single piece of information I could get my hands on. That's what I was going to do for my business. And it got to the point where, I was overwhelmed even within the first couple months. Showing up on social media alone, figuring out your brand message, trying to make sure that you have a product that is actually solving a problem for the target audience that you want to solve it for, and then ideal client messaging, and then making sure that you're posting consistently enough, plus networking, plus making sure your website looks good. If you're a business owner, you've heard it all. You're probably nodding your head being like, yep. You wear all the hats. And no matter how long you've been in business for, it's always assumed, or at least, depending on what your goals are with your business, that you are going to have a linear type of growth, right? So you're going to just keep growing, and you're going to keep growing, and that's just how it's going to be. And the issue with that, and I'm going to tie this into feminine energy because Awakening the Feminine Within is the title of the podcast. But the issue with that is that for women, if you are a woman who has a business, the way we grow does not look linear. And honestly, I'm going to say this right now, any type of linear growth or marketing plan or goal setting thing that you follow, throw it out the window. Because ultimately, to get what we want doesn't have to come to us in a consecutive path. Growth doesn't have to be linear. Anything that we want and how we get it doesn't have to be linear. The formula that's out there and what we call bro marketing solely exists because a certain demographic of people, happening to be men, especially when, everyone was like, let's go to America and chase our dreams, you can make a living for yourself and all that good stuff. It all started with, oh, you do, and then you get. But the only issue with that is that worked really well for men, and it does still and continues to work for men. And for women, it does work, but it's not sustainable, and it doesn't leave you with a feeling that lights you up and craves for more of it. So what I want to talk to you about today is how to have a business that grows and that makes you more money, but also feels sustainable in relation to feminine energy. So let's talk about the day in and the day outs. If you are waking up, or say on a Sunday, you're like, great, I have this to-do list. And the to-do list it has a lot on it, right? Like it feels like it's never ending. You feel like you're on a hamster wheel, or maybe you feel suffocated. And you're like, great, is this what the future of my business looks like? Is just me chasing this, endless hamster wheel, and I'm constantly just moving from one to-do list to another to-do list to another to-do list, and never really feeling a sense of, maybe occasionally you get that sense of accomplishment, like, yeah, I knocked everything off my to-do list, and then it resets and it restarts, and you have this overwhelming sense of anxiety, this overwhelming sense of like impending doom, because you're just doing and you're doing and you're doing, and either you're not seeing the result that you want, or you feel like there's no end to the doing. So it's not supposed to be like this for a woman. If you've listened to the earlier podcast of what we talked about when it comes to feminine energy, and the definition of feminine energy, specifically episode 2, it is so essential for a woman to trust and to also surrender and let go. A woman is not supposed to know what her path looks like. And that is how we get to a place of joy, contentment, peace, serenity, and just fun. That is how we play, is in not knowing. So this is going to be contrary to probably any other marketing advice that you have ever received, but your intuition is supposed to lead your business. If you are someone who is trying to have a sustainably run business, you don't have to, your goals should be very intuitive. It's not according to what you made last year. It's not according to, what a coach might tell you that you have to make this year. It is what your intuition is pulling you and telling you what to do. That is what is going to lead a sustainably run business. So and all this doing and all this working and all these to-do lists, that's not how it's supposed to be for women. For women, it is supposed to be fun. It is supposed to be, yes, there's going to be work. And of course, there's going to play into roles where you will have to step into masculine energy and you are going to have to do, but it shouldn't feel like it overwhelms your entire life. It shouldn't feel like you are drowning in doing and you never have time to step up and catch your breath for air. It should feel like you're playing. Like, honestly, now, I have had an insanely busy week this week that I'm recording this episode, and it has been incredible. Now, I know that when I have weeks like this, busier weeks where I am doing and giving more, that I have to step back, recollect my energy, and make sure that my spark is not being dimmed by doing. Because for me, if I do too much, it'll dim my spark to the point where I'm like, content, I don't know her. Like, you want me to create ideas? I can't create ideas because my spark has to be lit in order for me to come up with ideas that service my clients and that service my social media audience. That is essential to me. So if I just do or structure my weeks, every single one of my weeks, to look like how I did this week, then I would just suffocate that spark. It would no longer exist. And that is how I was even in the first 2.5 years of my business. I was going. Any idea that I had, I was like, should I even do that? I was doubting myself. I was chasing what bro marketing ideas were out there and what they were suggesting. And it left to me just like feeling like I was constantly pushing. I was chasing. It was never like, oh my gosh, I have this idea and I know that this is what I have to do and I know it's going to have a result, which is how I actually run my business now. The birth of this podcast was me like tripping over myself because I was so excited to get this content out there. And I was so excited to post little snippet audiograms and to talk about it on social media, to, do my website. Like, it didn't feel like work to me. Sure, I have, a list of tasks that I wanted to complete that I do for every episode and that I needed to do for the launch of this podcast. But it had such a different energy because I was like, it was this magnetic pull. Like, I have to go and do this. I have to go and give this to my audience. I have to go and create. And it really has been beautiful. And the same as for my photography business. I oftentimes will feel just this pull to just, oh my gosh, I have to go and do this, or, oh, I have to go and share this message. And other times I'm called to not say anything. And now, if you're familiar with human design, I'm a generator. So there is a little bit of that in there where I am not so, I can't just use my voice all the time. It has to be when I am feeling called to use it. But that being said, when it comes to this overall feminine energy and what it's like running a business in feminine energy, the work that you're doing feels very different. It doesn't feel like hustling. It doesn't feel like you're pushing. It doesn't feel like you're being suffocated by the work that you have to do. All of a sudden, everything becomes like, I just can't wait to do this. There is excitement. There's fun. There's playing. There's tasks that I don't enjoy doing, and I try as best as I possibly can to outsource those because they're not in my zone of genius. Creating this content, doing this, photographing my photography clients, coaching my coaching clients, that is my zone of genius. And that is what I try to focus on. So, even when it comes to, editing this podcast, I do have an editor. Sometimes I'm called to edit it myself. And I'm like, I need to bring this into Premiere and do this myself. And other times I'm like, that particular episode, we'll send that out to the editor. So what I'm trying to tell you is this pushing, this pulling, this feeling of suffocation, the anxiety, the overwhelm, and the hustling and the doing. Those are not, if you're like, oh, this is the wake-up call that I've been looking for, this is the answer that I've been looking for, trust your intuition. Trust that little nagging voice that's going on in the back of your mind that is like, the math is not mathing for me. Sure, this formula may work for men and it may work for other women, but it might not be what you're called to do for your business. And that's how it was for me. And I kept wondering if I was crazy. And the only thing guiding me, and this is well before I had discovered feminine energy, was that I was just like, I know I'm just not, how I described it was I knew I wasn't supposed to do what everyone else was doing. And then, 2 years later, here I am in this podcast talking about feminine energy because I just have not I felt so pulled to do things differently, to lead women down a path that was more sustainable for them, that would take away their anxiety, give them more peace, give them more joy, and have them excited to wake up in the morning to go and do the work that they were called to do. And that gives you more business. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what it's like. How does it look like if you're not supposed to know what you're doing? And if you're supposed to follow your intuition, what does it look like getting more clients, getting more money, getting more business, especially if you decide to, as I did, to work less but also know that you're going to make more money. So I remember when I first started, I changed my schedule. That was the number one thing that I did when I decided that I was going to deep dive into this feminine energy and I was going to really, truly live it. The first thing I had to change was my schedule because I realized that I was too open to allowing everyone else to just step in and want to take from me. And I'm like, okay, hold on. I got to put some boundaries around this. I have to make sure that I'm not allowing people to just take. I need to make sure that my spark is lit all the time and that I'm giving on my terms and not on their terms. So the first thing to go was my schedule. I made it so that people could only access me, say for business calls or coaching calls or whatever, after 12 p.m. Now, I'm not an early bird. So if you're someone who's an early bird, that schedule is probably going to look different for you. Maybe it is 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And maybe after that, no one has access to have calls with you anymore. And of course, there are exceptions to that. And I intuitively will make that decision based on, a client or a phone call or, so on and so forth. But I felt called to, 12 p.m. is going to be my when people have access to me timeframe. And then in the morning, of course, I will still work, but that's on my terms. And this allows me to really let my intuition flow because in the morning, that is when I have the most intuitive hits or the most light bulb moments or marketing ideas for my business. So if I got interrupted by a call at 9 o'clock, then I was being pulled away from the ideas that are crucial to the growth of my business. So that was one of the first things I changed was, okay, great. I'm no longer going to work in the evenings because I had this notorious bad habit where I would start working at like 8 o'clock at night and work until like 1 to 2 o'clock in the morning. And then I was just this in perpetual, number one, it's not good for your health. And number two, I was just in this perpetual bad habit. And then I also wasn't spending time with my husband or my kids in the evenings because I was just like itching and I knew I had so much work that I had to do. So I thought, okay, great. Well, now what I'm going to do is my mornings are going to be my work times / I'm going to get up, do my workout, write down, journal, breath work, all this good stuff. And then I'm going to work and then I have my calls. And if I don't happen to have any calls that day, I'm going to continue to work. And then everything gets shut down no later than 5 o'clock. And of course, there are exceptions to that. Sometimes I have shoots that go, through in the afternoon into the evening and I adjust accordingly. But my overall framework that I choose for my day-to-day, that was a big thing, was committing to myself that I had intuitive needs that needed to be grown, like they needed to be fostered. And so having a commitment to a calendar specifically, and how I wanted to set up my business. So you might want to get out a piece of paper and say, okay, how do I want to set up my business? When do I want people to have access to my energy? And the same thing goes for creating content on social media. I mean, you have to show up and give from your terms, right? When you are feeling ready. If it's a day where you do not feel like you can give to your audience, then don't. Like I've had that tons of times where I've had a schedule or even this podcast, I launched it a month later than I wanted to. And it was really hard because I thought, oh, another week delay, another week delay, another week delay. But everything happens for a reason. I just trusted that it was happening for a reason. And everything worked out. Literally everything worked out perfectly. And it all was fine. And if anything, it probably was better than when I had initially anticipated on launching it. So next up, after I had created a calendar for myself that I was like, you know what, this really feels good. And of course, if it doesn't feel good, you make changes accordingly. So, but for me, I still maintain that. Calls are only booked after 12 o'clock. And then any other thing gets blocked into there, intuitive time, workout time, other client scheduling time, marketing time, etc., creating content time, etc. So after that came, okay, how much work am I doing that is truly not necessary? And do I need to change how I am doing my work? So by that, I mean, up until that specific point, when I made all these decisions, I thought, okay, how am I doing with my content? Do I really enjoy how I'm putting out content? Am I enjoying the content that I'm putting out there? Does this feel like it's in alignment to me? And to be quite frank, up until I launched this podcast, it always kind of felt like I was a little bit shooting in the dark with my content. And I'm talking about my coaching content specifically because my photography content is definitely, it's always maintained, a specific, I have a formula for my photography content, but for my lifestyle and my coaching content, it always just felt like, is my messaging right? And the best tip that I can give you is if you are struggling with content, you're struggling overall just in that area and that world, keep searching. And I mean that energetically, like keep that search inside of you going because it is going to lead you to where you need to go. I know for me, I was like, oh, I'm not sure if this feels right. This feels a little bit tricky. This feels a little bit weird. But I kept searching. I'm like, I know at some point, putting out content is going to feel like breathing. That's what I wanted it to be. I had this vision. I said, I want content to feel like it's easy. It's easy for me. It's easy for me to put out content for my audience. And finally got there. It took a little while, but I knew I trusted that voice that was inside me. I trusted that, sure, maybe it took a little bit of time, and that's perfectly okay. See, running a business, according to feminine energy, means that you let go. You let go of timelines. You let go of goals that just don't feel like if you need to change one goal from the next goal, from the 1 month to the next month, do it. It's like, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Like we as women in our feminine are going to flow. Things are going to change. Things are going to look differently from a month to month to month. But you'll know because it'll feel right. And I don't mean a superficial feeling. I mean like that deep gut feeling, like your soul feeling that you'll feel inside of you. That's what's so beautiful about this work is that doing this and living your life and running your business more according to feminine energy will help you listen to that more. That is your guiding star. That is your superpower. So when it comes to, content, I analyzed, I said, okay, great. Well, I want to change how I'm doing my content. I want it to be more soul focused, more emotion focused, more like this is the heart of my business and this is the heart of what I do. I don't want to be like anyone else on social media, just posting tips and tricks. I really want it to be the heart and soul of me and what I'm passionate about and what I'm supposed to share and help women with. And thus was born the idea for the podcast because I'm like, one piece of content a day on Facebook is not sufficient to get across what I need to get across. It has to be deeper and more in depth and showcase more of what it is that this work is all about. And so from the podcast, then I break down other pieces of content. And for my photography business, it does make sense for me to just post content, once or twice a day on my social media platforms. And even for that, there are some times where I'm like, sure. For example, I haven't posted on LinkedIn for the last 3 weeks, but it felt like I didn't worry about it because I'm like, I'm in a different path right now. I'm in a period of transition, so that's okay. And, things like that, of course, I would like it to be consistent, but I'm also not willing for someone else to take over my voice and post something that doesn't really truly feel like me. And that is something that I follow my intuition with. Absolutely non-negotiable. I will not hand off my voice and my content to someone else unless my intuition has pulled me to someone that can accurately take care of that. So going back to my business and how I structured my day to be more into the feminine and letting go and trusting in the how. So by changing my schedule, it forced me to have more time with myself. And the trickiest thing about this is that number one, I felt guilty. I thought, okay, well, how am I supposed to really, not feel bad about not working? Because I was somebody who worked, 60 to 80 hours a week. And I literally, if I had a free second, I was working. And finally, I realized when I made this adjustment with my calendar that I could no longer do that. And so that forced me to, what do I really want to do? How do I really want my days to look like? And what do I need to do to balance myself so that I can bring more and have more ideas and more energy to implement in my business? And so by changing up my calendar and by delegating as much as I possibly could and restructuring so that I was really truly only working on my zone of genius, allowed me more time, number one, for personal development, because I was still very much deep. I mean, as you hopefully understand, you're always growing, right? The search to always grow and to better oneself is always there. And so I thought, okay, well, this is going to give me time to do a little bit deeper digging into the work that I really wanted to do. So that allowed for calls with, Trina Peterson, who I did episode 2 with at the time. I was doing, some calls with her and, as on need a basis, same with my therapist, same with just spending more time with my husband. I mean, I have been working so much since the start of my business that it felt that I now had to prioritize that. I thought, you know what? I need to spend more time with my husband. And by adding in more of my personal playtime is what I call it, because, personal development to me didn't really feel like work, especially when you're, doing it with somebody else, whoever it is, and hopefully it feels that way. I knew it was important, but it wasn't something I dreaded. I was just like, sure, the emotion, it's scary to be vulnerable, but I know that it's just going to give me more it's going to open my eyes even more. It's going to open up my soul even more to what I need it to open me to. So by changing the structure of things, having more play, having more of what I desired, just in terms of my calendar, that allowed for me to act and to force myself to trust more in what the universe could bring to me. So then what I focused on is I said, okay, well, this is what I want. I want this type of client. I want, this is ideally how much money I would like to make per month. And then I would let it go. I'd be like, great, I'm just going to put that out there. I'm going to trust in God, trust in the universe, that is going to come to me. I don't need to know how it looks like. I'm going to completely surrender. And I was forced into that, by the way, surrendering. I definitely, I tried as much as I could consciously, but then I was forced into situationally. And I don't regret that. I mean, it was outside my control. It had to happen. And I will definitely probably do a deep dive into that, in a future episode. But I surrendered. I let go. And then the hardest part about this was not thinking. That is probably the biggest, hardest task in this act of running a business sustainably is not thinking. Because your mind wants to have a safe place of we want to know what's happening, right? There's security in knowing. And that is probably one of the hardest aspects of running a business according to feminine energy and just living your overall life more in your feminine, is because you don't need to know. You don't need to know how. You don't need to know what kind of money is coming or how much money is coming. And there is power in that. And so by forcing myself to have more time really challenged me to not think, because if you have time off, you're like, oh, well, I'm just going to go think about my business and then that'll lead to doing, and then it still uses up your precious energy that you have for your business and your clients. And so not thinking is super critically important. And so I had to get really creative. I thought, okay, well, I'm finding myself thinking or worrying or getting anxious in this case. And so I am going to go and do, hobbies, activities. I had to be really proactive about it. Reading, I had to get proactive in the beginning when I was implementing all of this to really challenge myself to not think. Eventually it got easier. And then I would look forward to the point where I was like, oh my gosh, when am I going to be done working? Because I want to go, I want to go and read, or I want to go spend time with my kids. And now that still is my motivation. I'm like, okay, great. I'm not going to dilly-dally. I'm going to go and get my work done. And then some days it changes. Some days I am called to work more, and some days I am called to work less. And it really just depends on the day. But I follow my intuition each and every single day. But overall, that trust and being able to activate that trust more has brought in more clients, more unique opportunities for me, more money, and more. It's just more. It's all of a sudden so many cool and unique business opportunities have happened for me, like more so ever in the entirety of running my business, and more consistently in the entirety of my business since I've started running my business more in my feminine and truly in my healed feminine. And it's beautiful to see. It's beautiful to watch. I don't concern myself about money. I don't, fret about bills. I get so excited when I have to pay them. And I get so excited when any kind of dollar amount comes in, whether it's $250 or whether it is 10 grand or 15 grand or 20 grand. To me, it's the same energy. And I get really excited about it. And what I love about running my business this way is that I don't ever fret about where the business is coming from. Oh, I know business is coming, and business does come, and business shows up. And I take note of it and I celebrate the heck out of it every single time an inquiry comes in my inbox, or someone sends me a message, or a coaching client books, or a photography client books, or, any element of my business. I am celebrating it so hardcore. And I literally relish it. That is the best way to explain it, is that any positive thing that happens in my business, doesn't matter what size it is, I am relishing it and just soaking it in every single second. And at the end of the day, I'm like, oh my gosh, how amazing that was that I made, that $250 today that I made. And I'm so grateful. I'm like, thank you, God. Thank you so much for bringing this to me and giving me this opportunity. My perspective is so anchored in gratitude. And just, and then if my brain goes, well, where is the money going to come for XYZ or this bill, or, how am I going to pay XYZ? I'm just like, I don't need to know, because the opportunities that have come into my life since surrendering and letting go have proved that I don't need to know. And if you're in the stage where you're like, well, how am I supposed to, trust in that if I'm not used to trusting and letting go? Getting it, move from one task to the other. So say you're moving from working into, going out to the barbecue, or you're barbecuing for the family, you're prepping the chicken for the barbecue, and then you want to play with your kids, or you want to read a book, or you're going to the gym. Just you focus on that next task. There's no worrying about the bills. And it is very hard to turn off. I'm not putting down how hard it is to not think, but the more that you can implement, changing and putting up boundaries that really truly serve you, and that serve lighting up that spark that lights you up. And the more that you can focus on running a business sustainably, making changes, yes, it's going to feel scary. Yes, it's going to feel like you're ripping a Band-Aid off of a wound that is not ready for the Band-Aid to come off yet. It is going to feel like you're falling off the cliff. It's going to feel like you're drowning. It's going to feel like that. But you have to trust that little voice inside of you. You have to trust your intuition. You have to trust that there is a better way for you to run the business. You don't need to know the how. You don't need to know, you don't need to have a marketing plan. You don't even need to have your goals. All you need is just that magnetic pull. Trust it. That is why I wanted to make this episode talking about business and how to run it in your feminine and what it might look like if you lean into your feminine. Because we are just finite beings. We only have access to and only have a limited number of thoughts and ideas. And the universe is infinite. God has infinite possibilities of ways of things that can come to you. And so they're definitely going to be better than what we can possibly imagine or think of. And using that trust as a muscle, you're going to build it every single day. It's what can I do to build this trust even more? And what can I do to surrender even more to the universe, to God, to the outside source that's just going to bring everything, more of what you want to you? So I hope that was really eye-opening for you. I know that honestly, if someone had explained it, because I learned earlier on when I learned into feminine energy, the person who I first learned it from, she just kept saying you don't need to know how. But then I was like, okay, but what else? What else? And in this process, I learned so much more, and I really wanted to share that with you because it is honestly game-changing. I know I said that in episode 1 about why I chose feminine energy, but specifically in relation to business, I wanted to get more specifics on this is how your business grows when you run it in your feminine. You get to play, you get to create work in a way that doesn't feel like work, and you just are so excited to pour out your content to the world, and you can't help yourself but just show up. And you get to trust, you get more money, you get more business opportunities. And now it doesn't just, you don't snap your fingers and it just happens like that. But that's the beauty of the feminine. You know that it's going to happen regardless of the timeline. You don't have to be attached to a timeline. Whether it happens now, whether it happens in the future, you know that on your journey, you're going to be led along a path that is super, super important. And every single step of it is going to be so essential and eye-opening to your journey. So if you're not making that money now, don't worry. It's not because you're not supposed to have it. It's just because there's something you need to learn in order for you to have that money in the future. It doesn't mean that you let go of all the other, manifestation tips about acting as if you have it now. Don't let go of that. It just means that you're just simply trusting. The trust is implicit, just like your child trusts you when they're a toddler. There's implicit trust there, your parent has you, right? That is a level of trust that you should have when you think of what you want coming to you. You know what's going to happen. You feel it in your body, you feel it in your being. So if you are someone who wants to grow their business in this way and wants to lean more into their feminine, to implement these things into their business and needs some accountability, definitely check out my website, miriambulcher.com/awakening the feminine within. I do have a mastermind. I have a coaching collective of women. I do one-on-one coaching. And this is what I help women with. I help women whether they have business or don't have a business, and I help them even if they have a corporate job. I have a lot of women who are transitioning either from a full-time job into running a business, and they really want to have that sustainably run feminine energy approach. Regardless of where you are at, if you are feeling that magnetic intuitive pull towards what I've said here in this podcast and the episodes previously that you've listened to, and just overall yes, this is the direction that I want to head in, definitely schedule a call with me. You can schedule a coaching call with me, a coaching consultation on my website, and I would be more than thrilled to talk with you and learn more about you and what it is that you're looking for and to see if we're a good fit for each other. That is one of the most important things, is working with someone who you can energetically feel connected to, and that you're yes, this person, I know this person. Again, listen to that little voice. I know that this person can help me. And if you're someone who wants to share what your experience has been getting out of the hustle, or say you want to get out of the hustle, or say you've made you're in the middle of the transition and you have a light bulb moment, come and share with us in the Facebook group, please. The Intuitive Women is my Facebook group, and it is where we encourage women who are listening to the podcast and other women who we are connected with in the Facebook group to share about their experience, about their light bulb moments, about what it's like to open yourself up to the feminine. It's a safe place. We encourage you to speak up and use your voice in there and join with other women who are trying to do the same. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Definitely like and subscribe, whether you are on YouTube, Spotify, and if you can, please also give us a rating and a review. It will help us tremendously. Well, help me tremendously, I guess. And I really appreciate you so much for being here. If you haven't checked out the YouTube video, definitely go and give that channel a look. I know that audio is really popular, but I personally, the reason why I wanted to do a video as well is because I connect and energetically just connect with others differently via video. And I wanted to make sure that that was always going to be available and accessible for individuals. And I appreciate you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.